Storytelling is important in business, just like it's important in real life. Story is important because it's how we make sense of the world around us. Storytelling is essential. Storytelling is what bonds us. Stories are how we make sense of the world. Every single human being constructs their entire world with story. Stories resonate with us. Without story, we can't communicate and we can't understand. Even a loving embrace and a hug that gives you a deep, warm feeling is giving you a deep, warm feeling because you're putting that into a story in your mind about what that means to you. Stories connect in a way unlike any other information. You will communicate in a way that people not only understand, but care about. A data sheet or a PowerPoint presentation that isn't fueled by story is nothing to care about. A great story affects you. A great story affects you. A storyteller will know that their message is connecting with an audience because that audience will lean in. And when people lean in, they want to know more, they want to engage, and they want to act. Storytelling is important in business, just like it's important in real life. Stories are literally the bridge between people. The bridge between people. Storytelling is what bonds us. Stories are literally the bridge. Stories are how we make sense of the world.
Hello and welcome. Happy New Year. I can still say that, can't I? We're only 8 days in. Holidays, New Year, so much is going on. I get really sensitive around this time of year to overloading folks. So we actually try and go a little bit dark over the new year so that we're not contributing to all the noise that everybody gets at this time of year. So this is our first stream of the new year because of that, and hopefully you will get some useful tips and ideas out of this stream today. So my name is Matthew Widget. I am the CEO, founder, and principal consultant at Go Narrative, and we help technology companies tap into this magical thing called storytelling, and we do it as a tool. We see it as a tool, and it's a tool to get stuff done, as any tool is. And whilst any situation that you're dealing with in business has got more than one element to the solution, you will often get this sense from folks that their application, their method, approach, technique is the be all and end all that solves all those problems. Of course, they're all wrong, but storytelling does actually do that. No, but in all seriousness, storytelling is one of those tools that you can add to your tool belt. You know, the quintessential Batman comes to mind with his belt of gadgets, and those gadgets help, right? Different situations. Not every situation is going to be perfect for storytelling, but the great thing about storytelling is it's actually one of the tools that brings together a lot of the other tools, the other techniques, the other approaches. And in fact, this past week, I've been thinking a lot about one of those things that we all work on in business, and that is understanding what it is our customers need, right? What is the pain point, the objective, whatever it happens to be, that somebody is trying to overcome, to solve, to eliminate. And we think about that a lot in whether it's brand positioning or product marketing. Take a product, for example. I'm thinking of the workshops that we do with some of our clients where we have engineering and sales and the leadership team and PR and the partner team and various marketing functions all in the same room together. And there's a lot of ideas, a lot of smart people in the room when we run one of these workshops, right? And what we're seeking to do is to build both an understanding, but also a consensus on what is it that we want to talk about, right? What is it that we want to go out into the world and put out there into the world that's going to help us achieve our objectives? And any product is going to have multiple things that it can be used for. I mean, even you just take this cup here, which is one of my favorite brands of thermal cupware. Is that a problem? Is that a statement, or is that a problem statement? So I've got water in this today, and in fact, the white lid there represents the fact that this is water. I do actually also have some other lids. I use it for coffee. I'll use it for tea as well. And so it's got multiple functions. This is a pretty simple thing, though. I'm guessing that as a technology marketer or as a leader in the tech space, whether that's IoT, security, with software as a service, that your product's probably got a lot of capabilities, a lot of features, a few more than just being able to hold hot and cold liquids. And knowing what to talk about and what to talk about with whom is really, really important, right? Because if we talk about the wrong thing, then we all know what's going to happen there, right? And there's so much noise. We started off today talking about the noise that we get over the holidays and into the beginning of the new year with communications, whether that's emails in our inbox or the conversations we're having with suppliers or partners or our customers. So we're kind of bombarded with all this information. And the same goes for any product. So if you go back to that workshop example, what we do in those workshops is we're looking to come up with that shared consensus and agreement on what it is that we're going to go and take out into the world, right? And you'll notice I'm not even talking about storytelling yet, right? Storytelling is a tool that has a dependency on us knowing what are the elements that we want to talk about, right? Are we going to talk about the fact we can help this particular audience or this particular scenario, or are we not going to talk about those things? So that's going to affect everything that we do, right? And all the way down to choosing what case study we might want to publish. We're going to want to choose the case studies to publish that relate to the capabilities and the features and the problems that we can solve, right? For that particular audience or that particular scenario. So we have to figure that out. And once we figure that out, we can then start to utilize that and build stories from it. Now, as I mentioned, storytelling has a relationship with these elements. And in this case, what I want to get to is one of the points of consensus is, what are the problems we help solve, right? What are the pains that we help solve? How well do we know our audience and their struggles, their dreams, their objectives? How well do we know them? And can we come up with an answer to that? Because we don't always have an answer, right? Now, we want to make sure that when we're talking to an audience that we're not bombarding them, but we also want to make sure that we're resonating with them. And to resonate with them, we have to connect with that what's in it for me. So what's in it for you is why you're listening to the stream today or watching the stream today or the recording is you want to figure out, how can I do a better job of, maybe it's creating more persuasive sales and marketing, maybe it's building alignment within your teams, maybe it's the good old-fashioned driving better engagement through our marketing campaigns and our marketing tools, or through our sales teams, right? So you're trying to do that, and you're trying to figure out how can I use this storytelling thing to do that. So you've got these objectives and these pains that you're trying to overcome, and of course our customers do the same. So by going through that workshopping process, what are the first things that we're looking at is, let's get that agreement on, after we figured out who we're talking to, what are the pains of this persona, for example? Come up with that master list, right? And we actually have a process that we go through to come up with a bunch of ideas and then distill them down and then prioritize them, because that's a big, is a big rock to crack there. We actually, we use a lot of the liberating structures approaches, like 1, 2, 4, all. So individuals come up with some ideas and we get together in pairs and then quads and then come back as a full group, for example. And by doing that, we're able to cast a wide net, and then from that collection of what we catch, prioritize which ones we're going to keep on the boat, which things we're going to throw back into the ocean. But the important thing about the first step in the pains is, pains are related to fear, right? And fear is a big driver of what we as humans do and how we live our life, right? You can trace this all the way back through evolution. You can look at it today. I was sitting down and kind of brainstorming and thinking about the things like sales and marketing teams have fears about, right? And it's quite diverse. You could have fears that are to do with yourself, that you are, for example, maybe you want that promotion because your family's growing and you want to be able to provide your family. That could be a very personal fear. Or your fear could be related to your job, right? Which could still have a personal element to it, right? So the fear in that case could potentially be, I'm worried, I'm scared, I have a fear around, I'll stick with worried. I'm worried that the way we're approaching delivering information to our sales teams isn't working. And the telemetry there is based on this list of factors, right? And so that fear is driving how you would think about doing something differently. Funnily enough, I was reading last night, I was reading my diary from 2004, so 20 years ago. It was a big year for me because it's actually the year I came out to the US. And I think it was the first day in the US, there was this quote about fear in the diary I had. The diary that I was using at the time, a W.H. Smith diary, day to a page, and it had a quote on each one of the pages. And I used to love that. I now do a free form. So I use Road notebooks. I used Moleskine for a while, so I can just keep going and going and going if I need to. And like I did last night when I was writing for about an hour, handwritten, right, in my diary. But that first day in the US, there was this brilliant quote about fear, and I noticed it, and it resonated with me because here I was, I'd got on a plane, I'd come out to the US, and I had this adventure awaiting me, but also all this uncertainty awaiting me as well. So yeah, there was a little bit of fear in there. I wanted to do a good job. I was scared I might not do a good job. I was scared I might not be as effective as possible being in this global team. And the quote of that day about fear was, fears trace a map of society's values. We need fear to know who we are and what we do not want to be. So I'll just butcher that quote as I say it. But that quote is by Marina Warner. She's a British author. But let's break that down. Let's break that quote down. So fear traces a map of society's values. So we're talking about a map. We're talking about society, and then on the other hand, we're talking about who we are and who we don't want to be. And I loved reading that last night because as I was thinking about the theme of this week, which, like I said, is fears and pains and how storytelling can obviously help with that. But the idea that what I was talking about earlier with the workshopping to figure out what pains we're going to talk to, that starts to become a map, right? It's a map of not society's values in this case, but audience's values. And in this case, not even values from a moral, for example, perspective, but values in terms of what somebody values. Like, what do I see value in? And I see value in things that can help me eliminate fear, right? And so fears trace that map. And that's exactly what Marina is saying, writ large as far as society is concerned. And then the second part, we need fear to know who we are and what we don't want to be. And so at that point, it starts getting really personal, right? So take the fear of the promotion example that I gave a few minutes ago. Growing family, I want to get the promotion or the new job, right? So I can get the pay rise, and so I can pay for this, I can pay for that. Love it or hate it, we live in a capitalistic society, and so as our family grows, we need more resources to help that family, right? So the fear that we have about our family and providing for our family is related to who we are as a person, right? In this case, a parent that cares about their family and cares about investing in their family. As I'm talking through this stuff, you might be getting a sense for how stories can start to bubble up out of this, right? Now, in this case, with the personal example of a family, great, okay? But our examples that we want to zero in on are going to be about roles and organizations, right? Thinking about the personal angle has a huge amount of value, and I'm not discounting that at all. But of course, when we're thinking about a product or a service that we're selling, we need to make sure that we are addressing the fears and the concerns that relate to what that person's job is, what that company's trying to achieve, because by doing that, then we can create the message, the communication, the story that is going to work, right? That it's going to press the right buttons, that's going to resonate, okay? So if you take the example of the sales team, right? We know that our sales team are not, we're not effectively delivering what our sales team need to go and do their job. We know that through some telemetry. Maybe there's a survey that we did. Maybe we've got complaints. Maybe and I remember this from my corporate days, we'd go on a customer visit with one of our sales team, and they would fire up a presentation, and that presentation would be a presentation from 5 years ago, or in some cases even longer. I remember being in a meeting where somebody fired up a presentation and it was in 4:3 format. And this was long after virtually every presentation that was happening in the modern world had gone to 16:9, right? And so here this presentation is, and I know I've got some telemetry right now that whatever material we're providing this sales rep isn't being used. In fact, they're kind of digging back into their own archives to use it. So we get this telemetry, and then we start to try and figure out, like, how do we connect these dots together? And that's where we can start to think about using storytelling as a tool to actually do that. So once we know what the fears are, we can then start to think about what those pains are. So what would be the fears in this example? As a salesperson, right? I have had this presentation that I've had a lot of success with. I know it inside and out. This other material that I've been provided is, I have no confidence about using it. I don't have the time to practice it. I consume some of the content I need to understand what our latest products are. I've gone to the sales conference, so I've got that information, and I will be fine, thank you very much. using that plus the old presentation that I know and love to go and then deliver my sales engagements. Now, of course, the problem is it's not delivering what we back in corporate wants to use to have our sales team singing from the same hymn sheet that we're putting into our advertising, into our other marketing efforts, into what our CEO is saying at events, you name it, right? And I say corporation, my head was definitely off in the Intel and the Microsoft space there for a moment, but this could be a small medium enterprise. You could have, let's say, 100 employees, a sales team of 20, and you've got 20 people there who you need to make sure that whatever you're creating and putting in their hands is something that they're going to then use, right? And the fear that they have is it's a fear of change. It's the opportunity cost elements of fear. If I spend a bunch of time learning the new presentation, consuming this additional content, that's time that takes away from my ability to spend time with my family or do this other stuff related to my job that I need to do, entering stuff into CRM or whatever it happens to be. And so in this case, what we've got is we've got all these elements, right? We've got the fear element. We've even touched on some of the pains. In fact, I just gave that example of a pain, right? So we've got these different, and I hesitate to even say this, right, to put it in this way, but it's kind of like the two sides of the coin, right? The fear and the pain. I would say that they're more like one side of the coin in a way, but effectively a coin of challenges, right? The fears, the pain. And so we've got this material now, and we know who we're talking about and to, and now we can start to think about what does that look like from a story perspective. Now, one of the challenges that we all run into when we try and apply storytelling in business is, and I did this, is the first trap that I fell into, is we go and we look at Hollywood. We go and we look at the hero's journey, and we think about things like movies and we think about things like books. And as we're starting to work on what is the story that we have here in this example of the sales team and having a more effective marketing material delivery to the sales team, we think we've got to actually come up with an explicit story, right? And I don't mean it explicit in naughty terms. I mean explicit as in called out, right? So once upon a time, right? It was a dark and stormy night as the salesperson rolled up to the office building to go and try and find. No, we're not going to do that. But that is a trap that we fall into when we start thinking about storytelling, because we're so used to thinking about stories in terms of movies and books, right? And that is a huge win that you can have from a storytelling perspective, is being aware of that, right? And by being aware of that, you can then start to take the approach that I'm going to share with you now. With awareness comes opportunity, right? The opportunity to do something different in this case, and that is, in this case, tell a story in a different way. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that we don't have to think about stories in terms of telling a full, explicit, full-blown story. As long as we are touching the right elements of storytelling, if we touch the right elements, what we're doing is we're pressing the right buttons in the human brain. Now, as a side note, the reason why storytelling works is because we use it to put ourselves in the world, navigate the world, and then communicate about those experiences with other people. So it's baked into who we are, like our operating system, right? And so when we understand the structure of story, we understand the buttons to press in the storytelling brain to get the responses that we want. And funnily enough, the once upon a time that's the story book or the movie version of one of the buttons in the brain. And that button's all about connecting who is hearing this to what is being delivered, right? And so in this case, instead of once upon a time, I want you to think about how you could communicate to a salesperson about an experience to get them to think differently about how they're acting. Okay. So what I could say to them is I could say, a couple of years ago, when we came up with this fantastic new product, service, offering, and we built out this set of materials, including this new presentation, we found that half of the sales team didn't use it. And the half of the sales team that didn't use it, whilst they were having some success selling, they didn't sell as well as those who did use the new materials. And if you look at where we are now with this new material, there's an opportunity for you by using this to make sure that you're in the group that are having that high level of success, just like that previous time that I was just talking about. Now this, I'm trying to keep this as simple as possible, right? But effectively what we're doing here is we are telling a story, but it doesn't have that hero. It doesn't have that hero who started to do this thing and then did this thing and then did that thing and then did this thing. You don't have to do that with business storytelling. What you need to do is you need to understand enough about the basic structure that somebody wants something, there's a desire, that something stands in their way, a difficulty, and that they untangle the knot to get the certain results by doing a certain thing in a certain way. And there's a French word, denouement, which means the untangling of the knot. And so those are 3Ds. 3D, we live in a 3D world, plus time. So 3D, desire, difficulty, denouement. This is actually one of our frameworks that we use in our workshopping. And it's one of the, I have a copy of the book around here somewhere. So the Storytelling for Action playbook, I should have that as a prop I can always grab and just pull it out. That playbook, which is available on Amazon, has all of our frameworks and it leads you through how to apply them. So the 3D one, actually I can go one better for you on this. You can go to our website and you can actually download the first chapter, the first play, which is the 3D framework. And so you can actually immediately after this, go start playing with this idea. And what are you playing with? You're playing with the fundamentals. So playing with the building bricks like Lego. Once you understand the different pieces and how to put them together, you can be off to the races. Now, the beauty is, and this is something that I absolutely love about storytelling as a tool, as opposed to some other tools, is you don't have to be an expert. You can build your expertise and get better and deeper and more nuanced at how you do it, but you don't have to be an expert. There's some really quick wins that you can start having. And what I love to say about the 3D framework is, within the next 72 hours, I want you to have 3 conversations with people where you can either tell it or you can ask the questions, right? It's always good to listen. Where we'll do that one. You ask somebody how their day was, right? So they start talking and you zero in on something that they mentioned. Okay. They drove into the office for the first time in ages, right? Oh, okay, cool. How was that drive? Right. Okay. I don't know about you, but I've seen some pretty crazy drivers on the roads nowadays. Did you? Oh yeah. Oh, you did. Right. So you're probably what was it they wanted to? Why did they want to go into the office? Why were they going to the office? You can ask these questions. They ran into some crazy people on the road. That was something that stood in their way. Maybe it was something else. Maybe it was I wanted to go into the office, but I had a commitment now to help my spouse out with some childcare related things. And now I had to navigate this as well as getting into the office. And so how did you manage that? What did you do? Did you take the kids? what was it? So this, yeah. So what I did was I actually another friend that was actually in my department, and they weren't going in, but actually we're pretty good pals, and I was able to actually have them to take the kids in to the school. Our kids all go to the same school, and found a solution, and so luckily managed to navigate that one. And maybe they then talk about the crazy people that were on the roads. So you can ask the question, you can tell the story, but think about what did you in your story want to achieve, what stood in your way, and how did you untangle that knot, desire, difficulty, denouement. So immediately you can start doing this, and immediately you can then start to apply that in a work context, right? So I've been talking about this example of sales and marketing working together, and that's one of many, many examples, right? You could be dealing with an alignment issue in your 100-person company. You could have some really wicked smart product development folks who have, quite frankly, helped the company by creating the foundation to get the company where it is today. But you, in a leadership role or maybe in a marketing role, have identified some changes that need to be made, and so you've run into a problem getting the engineering team to align to this vision. You've got an alignment problem, right? So it could be an alignment issue with a couple of departments. Obviously, there's multiple different departments you could have alignment issues with. That's just one example. Or that sales and marketing one, right? So thinking about what is the desire, what is your audience, the salesperson, what do they want, right? They just want to get the sale, they want to get the pitch done as quickly and as efficiently as possible, and then get on to the next deal so that they can keep pushing things forward, and then they can get home, right? So what's the difficulty? What stands in the way of them achieving that, right? They've got a ton of Zoom calls or Teams calls. They've got to get from A to B. They've got a new product they're having to learn. And they've got a sales conference, so they've got to put their travel to get to, all these different things that are sucking all their time, and they just don't have the time to then do this, learn this new presentation. So it could be that. So how could they potentially untangle that knot? How can you help them untangle that knot? In this case, the service and the offering is your marketing services to your sales team and this presentation, right? And so you're figuring out, how do I fit that into the untangling so that I can help them see what they can get and how they can get it, right? And so it starts with that desire, that why somebody wants something, at what stands in the way, and then how you're actually going to go and then untangle that knot. Now, we started off today talking about fear and pains, right? And so fear and pains map directly into that difficulty. I'm sure you can see that, right? So the fear and the pains, we can take, and the message here. So, okay, that's not an actual question. So, but thank you, thank you nonetheless. So we can see how pains can relate to the difficulty, right? I want this thing, and this thing is stopping me from getting it. I'm actually going to encourage you to go one better, and that is, look at the desire, look at what is wanted, and look at the fears or the pains that somebody has related directly to that. And one of the examples we gave earlier was, I want a promotion or a new job because I've got a growing family, right? So that could be it, but it could be anything. Sit down and think, okay, so I've thought about the persona. I've thought about how we help companies, buyers, whoever it happens to be, with our product, with our offering, with our service, right? So we know that, we know what we want people to want, right? So if I take somebody from that audience and they want this, why might they want it? What is it that's driving that? The why, the engine that's it's going to get them to actually go out and buy something, right? It could be, costs, right? So maybe you offer a SaaS or an infrastructure as a service solution, and you know that it helps with driving costs down and to have flexibility in your costs and your budgeting, right, over time. And so what's the fear going to be around that? The fear could be, I'm getting close to my retirement and I'm worried that I'm not, these costs are out of control. If I can't bring these costs down, I'm going to be in a position where I've in the last 5 years of my career and I might not have a job for the rest of it, right? That's a pretty extreme example, but it's a way of connecting. What could that cost overrun be? Or you could say, look, we know that in your role, let's say it's a more of a marketing role, and but it's cost related. It's the costs that are being spent on content. And here we've got this AI thing, and there's some fear around how is this going to change what we do and how I manage my team. I might have to change everything. I might have to get rid of people. I might have to hire different people with different skills, right? And so the fear there could be uncertainty about what the near future is going to hold. And it could also be cost related, right? So it could be, I see this as an opportunity to bring down costs. Instead of cutting from our advertising budget, I'm going to cut some of these roles that are writing. And that's happening, by the way, with let's call it a knee-jerk reaction in some cases. I would encourage you to be very careful and very mindful in how you approach your staffing as it relates to how AI is going to affect that staffing, because there's a ton of terrible AI content out there already, and you don't want to be falling into that trap and spreading the noise there, right? Storytelling is a tool that can help with that as well. But in this case, we'll talk about this head of marketing or a CMO who's trying to get costs down, see this as an opportunity. Now, you might be able to come in and say, we can actually help you save costs with something else. It could be marketing automation, right? We can help you save costs around marketing automation so that you don't have to touch your advertising or outbound budget, and you don't have to make any staffing decisions yet around the impacts of AI. So we can help you with that. Oh, thank you so much, right? Look at that fear that we just solved for. And of course, there's explicit pains that can be the indicators of what those fears are. There we have it. One of the big core parts of storytelling, right? This idea of fear, pains. We had this wonderful quote, remember? Fears trace a map of society's values. We need fear to know who we are and what we don't want to be. So we've had fears there trace a map of the values of somebody who's running marketing, of who they want to be. They want to be an effective employee. They want to be a good leader. They don't want to be knee-jerk. They want to be making mindful hiring and firing decisions and organizational decisions. It's not necessarily firing if there's a reduction in force for a legitimate reason, right? And what they don't want to be, right? They don't want to be perceived in a certain way. So that was, again, Marina Warner, fears trace a map of society's values or even department values, and we need fear to know who we are and what we don't want to be. Now, your homework, 3 people over the next 72 hours. Tell them a story using the desire, difficulty, denouement, or ask them questions and listen to their story. Both are totally valid, but just keep that framework in your mind. And remember, the fears and the pains could be in that difficulty spot. They can also be in the desire spot. And they can be, that can be, by the way, there's always going to be some in the difficulty spot, right? There can also be some that you can leverage and tap into in the desire spot. The desire spot may not be obviously fear related, but fears are a driver of our behavior, of our aspirations about what we want to do, whether that's the fear of how we're perceived or the fear of what we want to achieve or any other number of fears as well. So I'd love to hear what types of fears that you're seeing within your customers and how you're trying to decode, communicating, using those fears to create stories, to create engaging communications that are going to reach your audience because you understand those fears so well. I'd love to hear what those fears are So you can reach out via the website, shoot us a note, and book a complimentary story assessment. Before you do that, take our business story assessment on the website, and you can find out what your story type is. And you can take that story type and you can take the 3Ds we're talking about, and you can use the story type to flavor the story that you're starting to come up with when you start to use the 3Ds for your alignment conversations with engineering, or your content consumption conversations between sales and between marketing and sales in that case. So fear, big component of stories, doesn't have to be super dramatic, but it's a big driver of human behavior. It's a tool that we use to understand the world, a big factor in what it means to be human, and it's a big factor of stories. Just thank you so much for joining today. I'm so excited for you to go and do this. And let's take a second to have a look and see if we've got any questions here. Okay, so how can I be flexible in how I'm thinking about pains and fears? How can I be flexible? I would say, if I understand your question correctly, you can sometimes think about pains and just be focused on pains. So you can think about that as being an issue, a challenge, something that's pain point, for lack of a better word, right? And other times there might be a very specific fear that is expressed in how we're used to fears being expressed, right? I'm worried, or I'm worried the business isn't going to achieve X, or I'm paranoid that if we don't address this thing, AI, whatever it is, that we're going to lose this other stuff, right? So it can be that, or it can be some hybrid of the two, where you're thinking about the fears and you're also thinking about what are those specific pains. And so that's a way of being flexible in how you think about this. Another way, if your question on flexibility, we could view this is flexible in how I think about your conversations with your teams, your workshopping. To be flexible in how you think about the different types of pain. The different personas may have different pains or different fears, and you can be dynamic in how you think about that, and use that as a point of discussion for your workshopping. And of course, we help with that kind of workshopping as well. So that would be that. Let's see. I like this one. So how should I think about pains, fears, or any of that stuff when it comes to customer journey mapping? Well, storytelling is the journey, and as you're thinking about the what will be traditionally thought of as like a customer journey map, think about the various stages that somebody goes through. Think about it more than from awareness of your brand. Think about it as awareness of the pains and the fears. At some point, somebody who's got a fear about cost savings became aware of that, right? Maybe it was a personal observation they realized that they had to deal with, or maybe their CEO told them that they had to find some cost savings. But there's a point where we become aware of the fact we've got a problem. So think about awareness of the pains and the fears, and how you can draw out what's maybe an implicit fear into something that's explicit, that you can put a label on, get specific with the pains that are related to that. And when you do that, you can do that across the whole journey. And then you can think about, do I have a big story that encompasses all of these? That's like a narrative, for example, for a campaign. Or do I have specific stories along the way at each one of these stages, as you said? And in fact, both of those exist together. The narrative for your campaign, or even your strategic narrative for your company, and then the individual stories, they need to relate, right? A narrative is like a parent, stories like the children. So when you're intentional about crafting that narrative, then you can also make sure that each of the stories you tell along the way both solve for the fears and the pains at that point, and also connect to all that work you've done, figuring out what the narrative is, figuring out what those fears and those pains are, your audience writ large, with how you're approaching your overall strategy and your overall marketing. So that would be a way of thinking about that from the journey perspective. How do I focus on what my customers want? What my customers want. So I think the interesting thing about this question is it speaks to me from a perspective of you're thinking about desires. So what do they want? And think about when you've got a fear or a pain and you don't want to be in that place anymore. You want to be in this place over here. What does that look like versus this? And that what is your offering, right? And then there's a how for them to get from here to here. And this is a why, right? This is driving that. Big fan of the who, why, what, how, where, and when. And that's perfect in this example as well. So when you're thinking about customer wants and needs and desires, make sure you're thinking about the fears and pains as well. And it doesn't have to be dramatic. It's really about being practical in how you think about the challenges that your customers have. And the stories you can then tell them, they're going to help them move to a place where they can see that you are the partner in solving for these challenges, and you're going to help them get to that better place. So cool. Awesome. Well, thank you. And thank you for those questions as well. Well, that's all we have time for today, and excited to hear from you about what those fears and those pains that you're thinking about are. And until next week, have a great one. Cheers. Tell some stories.